Hello, Programming 12. We are going to be starting a new sketch, which I've already gotten started a bit to share with you. What we'd like to start doing now that we've got our feet wet with doing some 3D programming, I'd like to try to create some kind of a three-dimensional environment, a place where we can walk around and look, and there'll be things to see and run into, and mazes to navigate and all that kind of stuff. So to begin with, we're gonna have to get control of the camera. The camera is a thing inside of processing in most 3D environments, whether it be a game or some kind of art program, where the scene is rendered from its perspective. It's an actual place, and it has various components and so on. To get started on that, though, we're going to need some landmarks in our scene. If we just create a void with nothing inside of it, then how will we know if we're turning our head or looking up or down? We're going to have to add in like a horizon or some sort of like floor to allow our brains to understand what all the numbers mean. Our brains are fantastic at processing 3D environments since we live in one and we evolved in one. Our brains are so good at it. Sometimes that gets in the way. As something that is unintuitive or looks a little weird actually is correct. So we'll see how it goes. Anyways, let's get started. I'll show you what I got so far. Basically, I'm adding in good old key press stuff. So I've added in the W, A, S, and D key variables, which are Boolean variables that keep track of whether or not we're pressing on the keys. Down here, I have myself some key pressed and key released functions, and these are the ones that, of course, that turn those variables on and off and allow us to move around. In my setup, I have created a size 800 by 600 window, and I'm using P3D as the rendering engine, which allows us to program with an X, Y, and Z, and the coordinate space is sort of part of that. Don't forget to put in texture mode normal, sorry. That's something I don't think I mentioned, or at least I mentioned in very quiet passing in the previous videos. Eventually we'll add in some textured cubes and things like that, and we'll need to have that ready to go. So just so we don't forget about it, let's put it in there right now. I set all of my keys to be false when we start off, because I'm not pressing any keys, and then we get started. So here's my draw function. Basically, I am going to have a black background, and then I'm going to draw the floor, and that's going to be our landmark that will allow us to understand if the camera is working or not. And then we'll control the camera. That's where the key press stuff will come in. When we press the keys, we'll move around. Eventually, that'll include the mouse as well, and we'll get the full, similar, I won't say exact, but similar to Minecraft or most 3D games, like how the mouse looks around, and you can look up and down and all over the place. And then you can control your movement with the keyboard and the looking with the mouse. But right now, it'll be pretty basic. And, in this video, just to get started, let's just draw the floor. Let's just begin there. That's enough challenge as it is. What I'd like to do is I'd like to see sort of a flat, grid that kind of just stretches out in front of me. Kind of like when you start in Minecraft on a super flat world, like it's just like the grass just goes and goes and goes. And you see the horizon and you see the sky. Nothing so fancy. I just want like a black and white grid. That's all I want. So I have background black right now. So let's go and actually just do that in 2 dimensions. Let's just make ourselves a grid in 2 dimensions first. And then we can bring that over to our sketch right now. And we can turn it into a 3-dimensional grid, which, by the way, just a spoiler alert, is basically going to be the same. We're going to just have to add in an extra coordinate, but those coordinates will be pretty basic. Okay, so let's make a quick new sketch. And this, you might remember doing something like this back in Programming 11 when we were just starting to learn loops. Do you guys remember we had some puzzles in Programming 11, and you made grids and I don't know, we made some kind of weird curve thing made up of a grid. It was really fun. I don't know. I enjoy it. So this might be a blast from the past. So I'll make a quick, not even active mode sketch, just a static mode sketch. Let's make it, I don't know, 600 by 600. It's just going to be 2D. And I'm going to make a little loop that will draw a bunch of lines that will go across the screen and then some that will go down the screen. So generally we use some kind of variable to do that. And we've been using while loops for quite a while. No pun intended. Oh, sorry. We'll do that right now. I'd like to show you another loop though. So once we're done, I'll show you what a for loop looks like as well. So we'll say, well, x is less than or equal to maybe the width. Let's just say, I could say width. I can say 600, doesn't really matter, hey? We talked about magic numbers and all, so maybe I should put width. So it's going to go across the screen, and each time I'm going to draw a line. So I'm going to draw a line. The line is going to, let's do maybe the vertical lines first. So the vertical lines, remember the line function? It's going to be like x comma 0. That'll be where the line starts. And we want that to be the top, right? And then it'll stretch down to the bottom. And the bottom's going to be, in the same x coordinate because it's straight up and down, but it will then be at the bottom, so height. And then we have to increase x, so x equals x plus, whatever number. 20. Sure. Let's just run that to make sure that's working, hey? Here it goes. Yeah, so we got some vertical lines. Fantastic. So now I'd like to make also some horizontal lines. And should I make a new variable for that? So tempted to just slide it in. I know it's kind of a blasphemy to put the x in the y position, but I won't. If you don't tell, I won't tell. It'll be okay. Technically, probably should make a y, but I'm a little lazy today. So I got my booster shot, so I'm feeling a little rough. So let's go. So we're gonna put in 0x. And then this will be width x. I believe is how that works. I mean, it's the same numbers, so it doesn't really matter width or height, but I think that's correct. Okay, so this will be the horizontal lines. Let's see, does that work? Yeah, okay, so we got ourselves a grid. And of course, if we were to change these numbers, if I was to make this, 800 by 600, does it adapt to fill that space? Yes, it does. So that's fantastic. Okay, so basically we have ourselves a grid. I think one thing I mentioned, I wanted to make it a black scene. So maybe I could do, background 0. And of course, I want stroke white because if it's a black background, I won't be able to see my my lines if they're black as well. So let's see. Okay, there we go. Ooh. Okay, looks reasonable. So this is basically a nice, little algorithm for drawing a grid. One thing I'd like to show you is that we've been using while loops this entire time. Programming 11, all the way through programming 12, they're great. Nothing wrong with them at all. A lot of programmers have another loop under their belt. It's called the for loop. And it's sort of a condensed version of a while loop. It's just a bit of a shortcut. And I haven't mentioned it to you yet, but I think today is the day that I'm going to show you. So the critical things to understand about the while loop and how that'll change is that we have sort of 3 components here that's always the same, right? Here, let me move these. The background and stuff is not really part of the loop. I'll put it up here. All right, so we have, first of all, we have a variable, first of all, a variable that kind of keeps track of our where we are in our loop. And in this case, it's x, and we are using it also as the coordinates of our line. So this is sort of where we create that variable, and we tell it where does it start. The next part of a while loop is the condition. This is how it knows to keep going. As long as that's true, as long as this x variable's value is less than the width of the screen, by golly, it'll keep on repeating that code that's in the braces here and here. And then you have whatever it is you're going to do, and our loops, we've had so many different loops, like this right here, well, not exactly that, but that's sort of the foundation of the loop. This is what the loop does. And then this is how we change x from one loop to the next, one execution of the loop to the next. So, really what I want to focus on for the for loop is we have our initialization, we have our condition, and then we have our what's called incrementation, or just like how we're changing our counter variable. So when we change this to a for loop, watch what happens. Instead of while, we say for. We take the starting point, the variable declaration, and we put it inside of this parentheses 2, and we put a semicolon at the end of our condition. And then we take this part as well, and we move it into the for loop. No semicolon, though. The last one doesn't get a semicolon. And there you go. That's a for loop. A for loop is basically like a while loop, but it's all the guts of the loop are put up front. They are not sort of scattered throughout the while loop. So this works exactly the same. If I run it, you'll see no different. Here it is. Wow, same thing, right? But a little less code, or at least fewer lines of code. It did get more sort of horizontal, but it's kind of nice to have all that stuff up front. It's nice to see it all in one place. And the fact that it all goes on one line, you know what? It makes nested loops really nice. Like when you have a loop inside of a loop, putting a while loop inside of a while loop is it's a little ugly. So having a for loop that is, like that, that's a lot easier. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. I'll just undo, and we'll go back to while loop. That's a while loop, right? And then we'll go forward. Oh, I don't know how to go forward. Okay, whatever. I'll just do it again. So sure, I learned that shortcut key. Thought it was Command Y, but okay, whatever. So this goes here, and this semicolon, and then that goes there. So just sort of 3 parts inside the for loop. Beauty. Okay, so I'm going to take this, and I'm going to bring it over to our 3D sketch, and we'll talk about what we have to do to change our 3D sketch to make that work. So I got my draw floor function ready to go. It's not like this is not a built-in function. This is a function I wrote, as is control camera. So if you type that in right now, it probably won't work. You'll notice, I got some stuff here. Let me delete these. Basically the same thing. I just don't want to spoil the story here. So I have a void draw floor and a void control camera. They're empty. They're just all inside here. So, that's if you're trying to get draw floor to work, well, you need to program it first. So here is my draw floor. I'm going to paste that in. But I don't want to draw it in 2 dimensions, right? I'm not sure what will happen if I run this. I kind of think it will be a goofy thing here. We'll see what happens. Oh yeah, so if we just drew it in front of our face, you can see it's a little bit fuzzier though, and it is technically that is in 3D. If we could walk away from it, you'd be able to look at it from different sides and stuff. But what I really want to do is I want to make this a 3-dimensional grid, and I want to layer it along the ground. And if you have played any Minecraft, you know that the ground is broken. The coordinate system of the ground is actually not x, y. It's x and z. X is sort of this way, and z is this way. In Minecraft, like if you dig deep into the earth, your y coordinate changes because you're going up and down in the earth. Or if you climb up a mountain, right, the y coordinate increases. So that's the same here. And if you're going like side to side and back and forth, like the surface of a super flat world, for example, or just a flat plane in Minecraft, that's actually x, z. So what I'd like to do is change our lines so that they're using 3 coordinates, and that we are changing not the x and the y, but we're changing the x and the z. So how do we do that? So first of all, our line function, well, we just have to add in extra coordinates, right? This is a pair of coordinates here. It's an xy, and here is an xy. I just need to add in a z. There you go. Also, I should mention that these numbers are too small. these numbers are a little bit on the tiny side. So we need to like spread them out because that covered the screen, but we want to put out this big horizon, stretching thing. It's not going to actually be super amazing, but I want to make it fairly big. So instead of starting at 0, I'm actually going to start at like -2000. And instead of going to width, I'm going to go to positive 2,000. So that's 4,000 wide. And I'm going to go up by 100 each time, so I can make fairly big, spaces. And then let's see. So instead of going from 0 to height, now I'm going to go from negative 2,000 to positive 2,000. And same here, instead of 0 to width, I'll go from negative 2,000 to positive 2,000. So that's just going to stretch it out a bit better. And now we have to add in I'm going to basically add in the y coordinate. I know technically we have x, y, but I'm going to add in a coordinate. So I'm going to make it sort of like this is sort of x, y, z. I'm going to put a number in the middle. That will become the y coordinate because that's the order x, y, z. So all the y coordinates are basically going to be the same, but you got to kind of pick a good number. If you pick a weird number, then you're going to, it might not be, like it might be above your head or it might be too far below or whatever. So let's just try some numbers and see what we see. So I'll start with 0. So I'm going to put in between these. So basically, I'm going to make each group of 2 into a group of 3 by putting a number in the middle of it. So there's a 0. So in between here, I'm going to put a 0. And in between these two, I'm going to put a 0. And in between these two, I'm going to put a 0. Again, I've just added a y coordinate. And so now I have an x, y, z, x, y, z. This is still the starting position, and this is still the ending position. Let's see what it looks like. Do I see a floor? And, oh, look, it's not a floor. It's a ceiling. Hey, why'd that happen? So basically, 0 is the top of the screen, right? Even in 2D programming, that's true, right? The y coordinate, if it's 0, you're at the top of the screen. So when we made our floor, if we put it at 0, we're actually kind of like right along the top. It's not what we actually want if it's going to be a floor. It would do. It would be fine. We could have a ceiling instead. But, while we're doing it, we might as well figure it out. So we can just increase this number to drop it down. What if I put, like, width divided by 2? That might be fun. Width divided by 2. Oh, no, sorry, height divided by 2. That'll put it right in the center of the screen. What would that look like? It'll be interesting to see. You don't have to program that yourself if you aren't feeling super comfortable with that. You can just see what I do. And here it comes. It's going to be like, wait. Oh, look at that. We're like looking straight in. It's like intersecting our eyeballs. The lines are going straight through our eyes. So that's weird. It's funny because you can see a bit of like thickness almost. And that's all part of the rendering of the lines. And that's correct. So we'll bring it down a bit more. So we could just put it down to, just put it at the height if you want. That would be a fine place to put it. That will definitely be at the bottom of the screen, right? We've pushed all the way to the bottom, just like 0 is at the top. And here we go. There we go. We got a nice floor. It's kind of a tiled floor there. So this is a great place for us to pause this video. Hopefully that made sense and you feel comfortable with the for loop. If not, yeah, you can still use a while loop. No one's going to force you to use a for loop, but it's kind of interesting to know. And later on, you'll see some for loops. So it's not a terrible idea to figure out how that works. And hopefully all this makes sense. Our x, y, z coordinates are a little bit different. We've added a bit more detail, but now we have ourselves a nice floor so that as we learn to control the camera, we'll have a reference point, a place where we can see. So in our next video, we'll work on the control camera code and we'll get to see what the camera function is, and hopefully that will be a good place to go. Okay, thanks so much, Programming 12. Talk to you soon.